Daf Yomi Higia Ziman Daf Yomi Daf Yomi Daf Yomi Higia Ziman Daf Yomi Tractate Avodah Zarah, page 10. Daf Yudam Aleph, with the words Shis Shnin Yetirata, and it is in the middle. It's in the middle of an idea. So let us go to the bottom of 9a, starting the new idea. It was talking about after year 400 from the destruction of the temple, if a person says to you, purchase a field that is worth 1,000 dinars, for 1 dinar, do not purchase it, etc. That's the basic theme. Okay, so here's the last line of 9b. 9b. Hahu ushtara dehavaktiv be. The Gemara relates, there was a certain promissory note which was written, and now we're on the top of 10a. Shis shnin yeterata savaban kamadav deraba the memar haishtam meucharhu neik be ad dimate zimne velo tarif. Amar Rav Nachman haisvare davkana kas ve v'hanach shis shnin de malach hu be'elam de'anan lo chashvinan lehu hu kachashiv le uvizmane katve. A date, there was a star that had a date, a contract that had a date of 6 additional years relative to the correct scribal date, which takes for its starting point the beginning of Greek rule. The sages who studied before Rabbah thought to say, this is a post-dated promissory note, which can be used only from the date it specifies. Therefore, let us hold it until its time arrives, so that the creditor will not repossess property that the debtor sold prior to the date that appears in the note. Rav Nachman disagreed and said this promissory note was written by an exacting scribe, and those 6 years are referring to the years when the Greeks ruled only in Elam. We do not count them, as Greek rule had not yet spread throughout the world, but he does count them, and therefore he wrote in the promissory note the correct time, as the date does in fact match the year in which the promissory note was written. Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer 6 שנים מלכו בעלם ואחר כך פשטה מלכותן בכל העולם כולו. Rav Nachman cites a proof for his resolution, as it is taught in a Braisa that the Rabbi Yossi says the Greeks ruled for 6 years in Elam alone, and afterward their dominion spread throughout the entire world. It is the latter event that serves as the basis for the dating system used by most scribes. Maskif lo Rav Bar Yaakov Mimai did Malchus Yavanim Maninon Del Maletzias Mitzrayim Maninon Yishavke le'alfa kama v'nakde alfa basra v'haim yuchalhu Amar Nachman Begol ein monin ela b'malchei Yavanim milva. Rav Bar Yaakov objects to Rav Nachman's answer. From where is it known that we count years according to the Greek rule, and that this promissory note was dated according to a system that uses the Greek rule as a starting point and was written by an exacting scribe? Perhaps, well, Sorry about that. What was I? Perhaps we count the years during the Exodus of Egypt. If that flag comes in here again, hopefully I got it. I don't know if I did or not, but it was weird. Okay, anyway, I'll start from the beginning. Rav Acha bar Yaakov objects to Rav Nachman's answer. From where is it known that we count years according to the Greek rule, and that this promissory note was dated according to a system that uses the Greek rule as a starting point, and was written by an exacting scribe? Perhaps you count the years using the Exodus from Egypt as a starting point, which occurred 1,000 years before the start of the Greek rule, and in this case, the scribe left out the first 1,000 years from the time of the Exodus and held on only to the last 1,000 years, omitting the thousands digit and writing merely hundreds, tens, and single digits. And if so, this promissory note is post-dated. Rav Nachman said in response, the practice is that in exile we count years only according to the Greek kings. Hi, Sabadachoye Kamadchile Nafagda Kvashtach Titania Begola in Monin Ela Limalchevonim Midvad. Upon hearing his reply, Rav Acha bar Yaakov thought, Rav Nachman is merely deflecting my legitimate questions with this answer. Afterward, he went out, examined the matter, and discovered that it was as Rav Nachman said, as it is taught in a Braita. In the exile, we count years only according to the Greek kings. Amar Rabina Masdin Sanamide Kaditnan Becha Benisn Rashashana Lemalachim Velalim Yamrin and Malachim Lamayel Chazam Rav Chizda Lishtarois. Ravina said the mission is also precisely formulated as it teaches that we calculate years according to Greek kings. As we learned in the mission, Rosh Hashanah 2a, on the 1st of Nisan is the new year for kings and for the festivals. But wait a minute, I thought that was only for Jewish kings. Well, didn't we say in Rosh Hashanah that was for Jewish kings only? Okay, that's what we're saying here, it's for kings. On the 1st of Nisan is the new year for kings and for the festivals, and we say about this, with regard to what halacha is it stated that the first of Nisan is the new year for kings. Rav Chizda said it is with regard to dating documents and determining their validity. Utanan be'echad b'tishrei Rosh Hashanah l'shonim v'lashmitin v'amrinan l'shonim l'mayim chata yom Rav Chizda l'shtaros kashish taros hadadi. And we learned in the same Mishnah on the 1st of Tishrei is the new year for counting years and for calculating sabbatical cycles. And we say, with regard to what halacha is it stated that the 1st of Tishrei is the new year for counting years. And Rav Chizda said, it is said with regard to dating documents. These two statements with regard to the dating of documents are difficult in light of each other, as according to one statement, the dating system is based on Nisan as the first month, whereas according to the other, the year begins in Tishrei. Umeshaninan kan malchi Israel, kan malchi Masoilam, lemalchi Umoisoilam mitishchem yaninan, lemalchi Israel menisan maninan. And we resolve the contradiction by explaining that here, the dating is according to the kings of Israel. Maybe that's what I was thinking about. And there, the dating is according to the kings of the Gentile nations of the world. That is, when we date years according to the kings of the nations of the world, we count from the month of Tishrei. Whereas, when we date years according to the kings of Israel, we count from the month of Nisan. Okay. V'anan hashta בתשרי מנינן בישראל גדל תכלסיס מצרים מנינן מניסן בעינן ממנה אלא לאו שמע מינה למלכי יוונים מנינן שמע מינה. Ravina explains his proof. And now that we count from the month of Tishrei when dating documents, one can claim as follows. If it enters your mind that we count and date years using the Exodus from Egypt as the starting point, while leaving off the first 1,000 years, then we should count from the month of Nisan when the Exodus occurred. Rather, isn't it correct to conclude from the Mishnah that we count years according to the Greek kings? The Gemara affirms, conclude from it, that the scribal years are in fact calculated according to the Greek kings. Therefore, one should explain, as did Rav Nachman, a promissory note that appears to be post-dated by 6 years may not actually be a post-dated promissory note. Rather, it is assumed to have been written by an exacting scribe. V'yom gini nusaya shel malcheim echurei mai v'yom gini nusaya shel malcheim amar Rav Yehuda yom shema'amidin bo goyim et malkam ve'atanya yom gini nusaya v'yom shema'amidin bo et malkam lo kashya adideh adivrei. One of the Gentile festivals listed in the Mishnah is the day of the festival of their kings. The Gemara asks, what is meant by the day of Genusaya of their kings? Rabbi Yehuda says this is referring to the day on which the Gentiles appoint and crown their king. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in a Braita? 2 Gentile festivals are the day of beginning Messiah and the day on which the Gentiles appoint their king. This indicates that these are 2 separate occasions. The Gemara answers that it is not difficult. This, the day of beginning Messiah, is referring to the coronation of the king himself, whereas that, the day on which the Gentiles appoint and crown their king, is referring to the coronation of his son, when a son is crowned during his father's lifetime. Umi mokmi malka bar malka v'yatan Yosef. There's a story in Rav Nachman of Breslov, I think, of a king whose son was crowned during his lifetime. Reminded me of that. Umi mokmi malka bar malka v'yatan Yosef hine katon nesaticha begoyim she'en moshi v'melech ben melech bazuyata meod she'en lahem lo gata v'lo lashon ela mai yom genusaya yom haleida. The Gemara asks, and do the Romans actually appoint as king the son of the king? But didn't Rav Yosef teach the verse relating to a prophecy about Edom associated with the Roman Empire? Behold, I made you small among the nations. Obadiah 1 verse 2 is a reference to the fact that the Romans do not place on the throne as king the son of the king. The continuation of the verse, you are greatly despised, is a reference to the fact that the Romans have neither their own script nor their own language, but use those of other nations. The Gemara therefore rejects the explanation of the Braita that distinguishes between coronation of a king and coronation of the king's son. Rather, what is the day of Genusaya? It is the king's birthday. V'atanya yom Genusaya v'yom aleida lo kashya adideh adivrei. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in Braita 2 Gentile festivals are the day of Genusaya and the birthday? So it can't be the birthday because, once again, these 2 events cannot be the same. The Gemara answers it's not difficult. This, the day of Genusaya, is referring to the birthday of the king himself, whereas that, the birthday mentioned in Braita, is referring to the birthday of his son. I don't know. It looks like it's 2 different days. Wouldn't they just say the birthday of his son, Anyway, okay. V'atanya v'yom genusa shelo. Yom genusa shel beno. Gemara asks again, but isn't it taught in Braita the day of Genusai of the king, and Genusai of his son, and the king's birthday, and the birthday of his son? Yom Genusai shelo, Yom Genusai shel beno, Yom Haledet shelo, v'Yom Haledet shel beno, Elamah Yom Genusai, Yom Shema Midin Bo Malkam, V'lo Kashi Hadideh Hadivareh. The Gemara further asked, isn't it taught in Braita the day of Genusai of the king, the day of Genusai of his son, and the king's birthday and the birthday of his son? If so, the Genusai cannot be either his or his son's birthday, because it says his and his son's birthday, in addition to Genusai. Rather, what is meant by the day of Genusai? In fact, it's referring to the day on which the Gentiles appoint and crown their king. And the fact that a Braita mentions both the day of Genusai and the day on which the Gentiles appoint crown their king is not difficult, as this is the day of Genusai as referring to his own coronation, whereas that, the day on which the Gentiles appoint and crown their king, is referring to the coronation of his son. V'ika shelach delo mokmi malka bar malka ayde shela mokmi kigon asvirus bar Antoninus de malach. And if this is difficult for you, that which was stated earlier, that the Romans do not appoint as king the son of the king. In fact, they do appoint a son of the king as king through the request of the king. For example, there was Asvirus, the son of Antoninus, who ruled at the request of Antoninus. Amar le Antoninus l'Rabbi, Paen adim loch Asvirus bri tachutai bet yaved l'Tveria Kalania v'ie'ema lehu chada avdi tre lo avdi aiti gavra al keve achavre v'yavle Yona le'ilai biyade v'amar le'letatai emar le'ela del mifrach le'ilai dinafrach Yona min yede amar shma minachi kamar li at bai minayu de asvirus bri yimloch tachtai ve'ema le'ela asvirus de tabe teveria kalanaya. The Gemara provides the background for this assertion. It is related that Antoninus said to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, I wish for Asvirus, my son, to rule instead of me, and that the city of Tiberias be released from paying taxes. And if I tell the Roman Senate one of my wishes, they will do as I wish. But if I ask for 2 of them, they will not do as I wish. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi conveyed his answer in the following manner. He brought a man, placed him on the shoulders of another man, and put a dove in the hands of the one on top. And he said to the one on the bottom, tell the one on top that he should cause the dove to fly from his hands. Antoninus said to himself, learn from it that this is what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is saying to me. You should ask the Senate, let Asvirus, my son, rule instead of me, and say to Asvirus that he should release Tiberius from paying taxes. Amar le mitzarini chashivi romai havi ma'ale ligina, or some say liginta kol yama akarle pugla bimeshara kame amar shmamina achi kamar li at ketol chad chad minayu, velo tigared behu bechulahu. Antoninus also said to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, important Romans are upsetting me. What can I do about them? Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi brought him to his garden, and every day he uprooted a radish from the garden bed before him. Antoninus said to himself, learn from it that this is what Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is saying to me. You should kill them one by one, and do not incite all of them at once. And now we turn to 10b. Top of the page with the words V'le Malay Mimar Bahedya. Amar Shami Bechashivit Rameh Misaru Li V'le Malay Belachash Ishom Nechativ Ki Of Hashamar Yolech Ezakor. The Gemara asks, but why not let him say his advice explicitly? Why did Rabbi Yehuda Nasi answer in such a circumspect way, which could have been interpreted incorrectly? The Gemara answers, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said to himself, if I answer openly, the important Romans might hear me and will cause me anguish. The Gemara asks, but why not let him say his advice quietly? The Gemara explains, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was still worried that they might hear what he said, because it is written, curse not the king, no, not in your thought, and curse not the rich in your bedchamber, for a bird of the air shall carry the voice. Ecclesiastes 10:20. Havileyahu baradeshme gira Ka'avda isura Shadar le gargira Shadar le kosbarta Shadar le karati Shalach le chasa. The Gemara relates Antoninus had a certain daughter whose name was Gira, who performed a prohibited action, meaning she engaged in promiscuous intercourse. Antoninus sent a rocket? No. Antoninus sent a rocket plant, a gargira, I guess a rocket plant, okay, to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi to allude the fact that Gira had acted promiscuously. Gar. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi sent him a coriander, a kuzbarta, which Antoninus understood as a message to kill his daughter, as she was liable to receive the death penalty for her actions. Antoninus sent him leeks, cards to say, I will be cut off if I do so. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi then sent him lettuce. Chasa, Antoninus should have mercy on her. Why did he say to kill her if he's going to say, have mercy on her? And why did he say mercy? And what does it mean that he'll be cut off? I don't understand this whole scene that happened here. Okay, anyway. Kol yom hava shadar Ishadar le'lav paricha b'matrata Echiti epumai hu amrahu Amtiu chidel rabbi Amr rabbi lo tzarchina itli tuva Amr lehavi leman dibatrach Yehavi dibatrai Diatu batrach Udiati minayu nipokalayu. The Gemara relates, every day Antoninus would send to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi crushed gold in large sacks with wheat. In the opening of the sacks, he would say to his servants, bring this wheat to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and they did not realize that the bags actually contained gold. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said to Antoninus, I do not need gold, as I have plenty. Antoninus said, the gold should be for those who will come after you, who will give it to the last ones who come after you, and those who descend from them will bring forth the gold that I now give you and will be able to pay taxes to the Romans from this money. כל יום האבי מתתרי עבדי חד קטלה בבא דברבי וחד קטלה בבא דביתה אמר לה בעידנה דאיתנה לא נשכח דבר כמך. The Gemara relates another anecdote involving Antoninus. Antoninus had a certain underground cave from which there was a tunnel that went from his house to the house of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Every day he would bring 2 servants to serve him. He would kill one at the entrance of the house of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and he would kill the other at the entrance of his house, so that no living person would know that he had visited Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He said to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, when I come to visit, let no man be found before you. Yom Echad, one day, Yom Echad, one day. Eshkachei l'Rabbi Chanina bar Chamada Haviyativ. Amar lo min lach, idana diatena, lo nishach kavar kamach. Amar le, let den bar inish. Amar le imale, lehu abda, digane ababa, dikaim belete. One day, Antoninus found that Rabbi Chanina bar Chama was sitting there. He said, did I not tell you that when I come to visit, let no man be found before you? Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said to him, this is not a human being. He is like an angel, and you have nothing to fear from him. Antoninus said to Rabbi Chanina bar Chama, tell that servant who is sleeping at the entrance that he should rise and come. Azor Rabbi Chanina bar Chama, eshkacheh. Tiavakatil Amar Hechi Abid Iazil Be'emale Dekatil En Meshivin Al HaKalkala Esh Bekebezel Kamazalainu Mazal Ze Mazal Zilna Ibalchuza Bayrachamale Be'achaye Bishadre Amar Yadana Zute Deit Bechu Mechia Betim Mihu Beidana Deatena Lo Nishkach Inish Kamach. Rabbi Chanina bar Chama went and found that the servant Antoninus referred to had been killed. He said to himself, how shall I act? If I go and tell Antoninus that he was killed, this is problematic, as one should not report distressing news. If I leave him and go, then I would be treating the king with disrespect. He prayed for God to have mercy and revive the servant, and he sent him to Antoninus. Antoninus said, I know that even the least among you can revive the dead, but when I come to visit, let no man be found before you, even as one as great as Rabbi Chanina bar Chama. Kol yoma Av mishamesh l'Rabbi machale mashkele ki avoy Rabbi l'vesek l'puraya have gegen kame puraya amar le sak ilave l'purayach amar le lav orachara lezalzole b'malchuta kulehai amar le mi yesimeni matza tachtecha leolam haba. The Gemara relates every day Antoninus would minister to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He would feed him and give him to drink. When Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi wanted to ascend to his bed, Antoninus would bend down in front of the bed and say to him, ascend upon me to your bed. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said in response, it is not proper conduct to treat the king with this much disrespect. Antoninus said, oh, that I were set as a mattress under you in the world to come. Amar le atena dial madiati Amar le in Amar le v'akativ lo yesri lebet Esav biose maseh Esav. On another occasion, Antoninus said to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, will I enter the world to come? Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said to him, yes. Antonina said to him, but isn't it written, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esav? In Avodah 1:18. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi answered, the verse is stated with regard to those who perform actions similar to those of the wicked Esav, not to people like you. Tanya nami hachi lo yeh sarid beit Esav yachol hakol tam lomar lebeit Esav be'osim ma'aseh Esav. This is also taught in Braita from the verse, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau. One might have thought that this applies to everyone descended from Esau, irrespective of an individual's actions. Therefore, the verse states of the house of Esau to indicate that the verse is stated only with regard to those who continue in the way of Esau and perform actions similar to those of Esau. Amar Lev Yakativ Shema Shama Adon Malchem Chonesia Amar Le Malchai Velo Kol Ma Malcheha Chonesia Velo Kol Sareha. Antonina said to Yehuda Hanasi, but isn't written in the description of the netherworld, there is Edom, her kings and all her leaders? Ezekiel 32:29. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said to him, the verse states her kings, but not all of her kings. And likewise it states all of her leaders, but not all of her leaders. Some of them will merit the world to come. Tanya Nami Hachi, Malchea v'lo kol malchea, kol nesiea v'lo kol zerea, Malchea v'lo kol malchea, Prat le'Antoninus ben Asvirus, Kol nesiea v'lo kol sarea, Prat le'Ketia bar Shalom. This is also taught in Braita. The verse states her kings, but not all of her kings, and all her leaders, but not all of her officers. The inference learned from the wording of the verse, her kings, but not all of her kings, serves to exclude Antoninus, the son of Asvirus, and the inference from the wording, all her leaders, but not all of her officers, serves to exclude the Roman officer, Ketia, son of Shalom. Ketia bar Shalom, my Havi. The Gemara asks, what is it that occurred involving Ketia, son of Shalom? Ahu kasara de havisani de Udai. Amalahu lechashivi de malchuta. Misha alelo nima beraglo. Yikateena bichye o yinichena. Yitzar amulo. Yiktaena bichye. So what happened with Ketia, son of Shalom? As there was a certain Roman emperor who hated the Jews, he said to the important members of the kingdom, if one had an ulcerous sore rise on his foot, should he cut it off and live, or leave it and suffer? They said to him he should cut it off and live. The ulcerous sore was a metaphor for the Jewish people, whom the emperor sought to eliminate as the cause of harm for the Roman Empire. Amar lo Ketia bar Shalom chadelo yichadlo lechulu dichtiv ki arba rochot hashamayim parashti etchem ma'ika amar ilema de badar tehon, and in bracket it says de badarit yatchon be'arba rochot hay ki arba rochot le'arba rochot mibayele ela כשם שאי אפשר לעולם בלא רוחות, כך אי אפשר לעולם בלא ישראל. ועוד קרא לך מלכות הקטיה. Ketia, son of Shalom, said to him, it is unwise to do so for two reasons. One is that you cannot destroy all of them, as it is written, for I have spread you abroad as the four winds of heaven, says the Lord, Zechariah 2:10. He clarified, what is it saying? Shall we say that the verse means that God has scattered them to the four winds of the world? If so, this phrase, as the four winds, is inaccurate, since it should have said to the four winds, not as the four winds. Rather, this is what the verse is saying. Just as the world cannot exist without winds, so too the world cannot exist without the Jewish people. and they will never be destroyed. And furthermore, if you attempt to carry out the destruction of the Jews, they will call you the severed kingdom, as the Roman Empire would be devoid of Jews, but Jews would exist in other locations. Amar le me mar shapir ka'amret mihu dechol zachi malka shadule lekamonai chalila. The emperor said to Katia, "You have spoken well, and your statement is correct, but they throw anyone who defeats the king in an argument into a house full of ashes, where he would die." He said, "Look, you spoke well, but you defeated me, and if you defeat me, it's going to be put in a house of ashes and die." Mihu kol zachi malka shadule kamonai chalila kad have genaktin le ve'azlin amat le hai matronita vaile le'ilfa ti'azla belo michsa nafal reshed urlte kata amar yahavit michsai khalefit ve'avarit ki kashadule amar kol nichsai לרבי עקיבא וחבריו. יצא רבי עקיבא ודרש, והיה לאהרון ובניו מחצה לאהרון ומחצה לבניו. So we were up to the point where the emperor said to Katia that he spoke well, but he defeated him in debate, and whoever does that has to be thrown into a house of ashes and die there. When they were seizing Katia and going to take him to his death, a certain matronita, a matron, said to him, "Woe," it's like a noblewoman, "woe to the ship that goes without paying the tax." Katia bent down over his foreskin, severed it. He bent down? Not sure what that means. He bent down over his foreskin. Maybe he bit it off. Doesn't mean he bent down. He bent down over his foreskin, severed it, and said, "I give my tax. I will pass and enter." When they threw him into the house of ashes, he said, "All of my property is given to Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues." How was this inheritance to be divided? The Gemara relates Rabbi Akiva went out and taught that the verse, "and it shall be for Aaron and his sons," Exodus 29:28, means half to Aaron and half to his sons. Here too, as Rabbi Akiva is mentioned separately, he should receive half, while his colleagues receive the other half. Okay. Yatsa bat kol ve'amra Katia bar shalom mezoman לחיי עולם הבא. בכה רבי ואמר, יש קונה עולמו בשעה אחת, ויש קונה עולמו בכמה שנים. The Gemara returns the story of Katia. A divine voice emerged and said, "Katia, son of Shalom, is destined for life in the world to come." And when Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi heard this, he wept, saying, "There is one who acquires his share in the world to come in one moment, and there is one who acquires his share in the world to come only after many years of toil." Antoninus Shamshe Rabbi Adarkan Shamshe Rav Ki Shachiv Antoninus Amar Rebbe Nisparda Chavila. The Gemara relates Antoninus would attend to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and similarly the Persian king Al-Rakan would attend to Rav. When Antoninus died, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said, "The bundle is separated." When Adrakan died, Rav said likewise. Or Rav likewise said,